Alright guys, so this is question number 2 here, and this is also a series of questions there, and it goes for, just like the previous video I had read that question, which was question number 1. So this is Azure AZ104 prep video, and I'm gonna keep on putting a lot of questions there with some explanations there. So that also says the same thing. You have an Azure subscription that contains the following users in an Azure Active Directory tenant named contoso.onmicrosoft.com. So user 1 is global administrator, user 2 is also global administrator in Azure Active Directory, user 3 is user administrator, while user 4 is just the owner of Azure subscriptions, right? So it says that user 1 creates a new Azure Active Directory tenant named external.contoso.com. So a new tenant has been created. Now, how do you create a new tenant? Suppose you're in Azure Active Directory here, so and you go to overview here. So I'm inside the Azure Active Directory portal menu. Then I go down to I'm inside the Azure IaaC, or Infrastructure as a Service. Then I go down to Azure Active Directory here in the portal menu, and then I go for overview. Then there is a switch tenant and there's a create tenant here as well. So right, you can just create a tenant. If you click the create tenant, there's Azure Active Directory here, configuration, and then you can go for, suppose it's Bitcoin company, and then you go for that same name here, Bitcoin company 123, right? So it ends with .onmicrosoft.com here, and you can just put where you are, and then review plus create. So you can create a tenant like this, and you can switch to that tenant. You can create a new user in the tenant as well, right? So you can create a tenant here, and once you do, so I'll just right click and duplicate this, and once the tenant is created, so you can switch tenant as well as a global administrator. So I didn't create another tenant, but if you had, you would have just switched to that tenant. So who has the permissions to create a tenant and then switch to a tenant as well? It's always a global administrator that has that permission. So if you go to roles and administrators here, so then you go for Glow. So it's the global administrator that can go for different tenants and create tenants and switch them and then create users there. So this is what it's talking about right now. If I just minimize this, so user 1 creates a new Azure Active Directory tenant named external.contoso.com, and that's user 1, which is a global administrator, which is good. You need to create new user accounts in external.contoso.onmicrosoft.com. So that's the the new tenant solution. You instruct user 4 to create the user accounts, which has the owner Azure subscription permission. So obviously this can only be done by a global administrator. The user administrator and owner of just the Azure subscription does not have enough rights to go ahead and create new tenants and then create users, switch to the tenant and then create users. So that's why the answer would be B, which is no. So owner cannot do that, only global administrators can do that. And you can also see from the vendor documentation, add new users or delete existing users from your Azure Active Directory organization. To add or delete users, you must be a user administrator or global administrator. This says that if you want to add or remove a user, but it does not mention if you want to switch a tenant and then add a user there as well. So that also requires that you must have a global administrator permission to switch to a tenant. Otherwise, if you don't switch, how can you create a user in that other tenant, right? So the answer would be then no here. And do let me know about how do you want to see all those questions there? Is it good enough, or do you want more explanation? Any of your own questions, you can put it in the comments as well. I'll keep on adding more question videos here for many exams. For now, it's AZ104.